there isn't a plug socket anywhere.
Can I ask you...
Would I be able to use that to plug in that for the next session?
Space for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, because we need to do some sound check for music. So go and have a break, please. Have a cup of tea, and be back in about 20-25 minutes. How about that, huh? Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The first question to you
okay.
is about working with United Nations and consular that you mentioned.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And then from that, I'll transition to the Ahmadi question as a follow-up question.
So we start off just on just the basics of advancing human rights through these mechanisms without specific reference to working with the other religions, and then you move into the other working with other religions.
No. Okay. First, it will be Karima talking about UN.
Yeah.
Then it will be Teresa talking about EB, Parliament. And then I will bring you as sort of the civil society person from our side who does the work.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then sort of you round up whatever they say. And if you have some suggestions for them, look at.
Okay, so it's just about lobbying in the context of all of these bodies. Yeah. Okay.
So these two bodies.
Yeah. Well, what we do is United Nations, Council of Europe, but also the OSCE is another important one.
Let's. I mean, just mention that briefly. In 5 minutes. So
I'll mention. Yeah, but you don't want me to mention the alliances yet. You bring that in later.
I'll bring it later. Yeah, I'll bring it later. Are you the creator of a fantastic film? Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You want? Okay.
Okay, Swan. Just in case we have it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I only got one.
I know a few people from Iran, and I always have the impression that they're very secular, very modern. It seems like almost European country.
Where people from Iran here?
Yes.
Well, that's very. It's not a good representation of Iran.
It's because it's a sample, not the fact that.
Yeah. Yeah, and also because of a lot of Iranians that are liberal, they're also upper class. Whoever can afford a ticket. Yeah, and if
in the country you wouldn't say there's such a...
No, I wouldn't, and here's something a lot of Iranians would disagree with me, but I say that Iranians living in more liberal, they live in their own social bubble, and when I tell them that actually statistics show that 85% of Iranians are religious, they don't believe me. Iranians don't believe me, and I know this is statistics. Like you live in your own social bubble, and you don't understand what most of Iran is like. Yeah, and they actually go out of their way trying to show Iran is actually liberal because they don't want pride. Yes, that's very nice. And I actually don't really like the anti-Islam movement in Iran because it usually is anti-Arab, right? Because in Iran you have the religious people versus the nationalist people, and I don't want to back nationalism either, right? So you have these people that nationalism is
they feel like Aryan or something.
Yes, and they think like this Islam is this Arab, and they have this glorified view of what Iran was before the Arab. Yeah, but they think that Islam is an Arab invasion of Iranian culture. So that's what they say. So they mix their anti-Islam hatred. Yeah. So it's dark. But what unites the entire country is their hatred for Arabs. Because the religious people hate Arabs because they're Sunni, and the nationalist people hate Arabs because they're racist. They all can get along with their hatred for Arabs.
Moshadeghi, if I read, seems almost like a civilized country. Before Moshadeghi was independent.
Yes. Well, yeah.
And everything has been just destroyed by it.
Yeah. It wasn't perfect, but it was weird. Well, no, actually, the Shah. Yeah. I mean, Shahs did have good fortune. But you couldn't go and criticize stuff. So, but still, more freedom.
I spoke to an Iranian some time back, and he said it will take at least 50 years for the regime to change in Iran. He's not
No. They're pretty good. They're pretty smart. They don't underestimate them as religious unity. They're not. They're pretty Catholic. They know what they're doing. They survived this long. They are very strategic. Now they're the major power in the Middle East. They're even outside Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I mean, Iran has managed to become a force to be reckoned with in the Middle East. They're now much more influential. They have their own. Now they control Iraq. right? They managed to save Assad. They have proxy wars in Yemen, right? So Saudi is terrified about Iran's gaining influence, and that's why it's doing this to Qatar. That's why it's begging the United States to not to allow the nuclear. Like Saudi Arabia is really scared right now of Iran's growing power in the region. Sunni Shia divide them alive.
They have no problem with me with the Moroccan man.
Vancouver can. It's all civilized compared to Iran. Yeah, like I've been randomly selected for screening 13 times in the airport, and people tell like, "Oh, it's not random. This is racism." Like, if it's not random, even if it is profiling, I come from a country that if I go back to, they'll hang me. I'll take 5 seconds of extra screening. Well, no, it's like you just go through a machine. They go like this, you're out. Like that's the extra screening. Like if that's profiling, this is the country that welcomes me with open arms. When my own country would kill me if I go back, that's fine. That's dangerous. Come, let's go find some.
I should have been one of the things I was talking to but not the government didn't take clarification from all these women that they can't petition, and so they don't know that they actually have this video because there was a beautiful law like against violence in women, right? And so they were like asking I saw that. Because they were that's why they built these roads. But right, yeah. You know, right. That's very it's very yes.
Okay, I haven't found definitely.
Which is there.
What happened?
Everyone start making their way back to their seats, please. Thank you.
I am, yeah. What's I want to get the whole.
It's not Jimmy.
No, she has short hair in that picture.
Sorry.
Right, can I ask you to take your seats, please, so we can make a start? We're making a start.
Alltså du snackar om. Du vill hålla minivisera nu.
Jag är nervös med det.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Our next panel is on secularism as a human right. The chair is the author of book Jallad, Death Squads and State Terror in South Asia. Tasneem Khalil is a Swedish and Bangladeshi journalist and editor of Independent World Report of a Journal of Human Rights and Global Politics. Will be chairing this session. Tasneem, over to you.
Yeah, we are missing one panel member. She is my Facebook friend, if that matters. Who's on? Mahmoud?
Who's on, Mahmoud? Okay. If you make a start, I'll go and send a search party for her.
Okay, excellent. Yes. So whenever I'm taking poses like this, I have a very, very bad handwriting, and even I cannot understand. So anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank someone very, very special. And people with Muslim backgrounds know that Hazrat Aisha, one of the wives of Prophet Muhammad, is often referred to as the mother of the believers. And we have today amongst us the mother of the Murtads. And it's an honor to come here at her invitation. Mariam Namazi, thank you so much for that. That's the title of Dia's next film. So, before we go into the discussion, the panel discussion on this, I would like to just note that there can be so many definitions of secularism. You can have very, very postmodern definition of secularism, which is to say no definition of secularism. But I actually picked up something from a stall here, which just says it as it is. Secularism is a principle that involves two basic propositions. The first is the strict separation of the state from religious institutions. And the second is that people of different religions and beliefs are equal before the law. That's it. That's what we are referring to here today. Now, in the morning, Bonna Ahmed actually touched upon this. She mentioned the history of colonialism, and she also mentioned that while Europe was going through this process of secularization in colonized world, in the third world, we had religions-based politics introduced by the colonialists. So whenever we are having this discussion, we need to remember this, that religion-based politics, religion-based state in a post-Westphalian world is actually a gift of colonialism. And if we are to fight colonialism, then we must also fight religion-based states and religion-based politics. Now, I personally, and my authority on this is that I do have a degree on human rights, that's it. I personally don't think that we should be identifying secularism as a right per se, and we can have a debate about that. I see secularism more as a framework of delivery of human rights, like democracy. And very quickly, I'd just like to mention that we can have a very, very secular system where human rights abuses go on very wantonly. Case in point is China, where you have a separation between the church or the state, or no church. But then again, you have persecution of Uyghur Muslims, for example. And first, I'd like to start with the international system of human rights, and how the international system of human rights, what we refer to as the system that comes from the International Bill of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the ICCPR and other conventions. How do you make sure that how do you say what is the role of secularism in protecting the rights mentioned? And my question is to Karima. How do you make sure that secularism is used as a mechanism, as a framework to deliver the rights?
So thank you very much for the question, and I also would like to thank Mariam Namazi and the organizers for giving us this important space. So I think it's important to think about what exactly is guaranteed by international human rights norms in the area of what is called freedom of religion or belief nowadays, or FORB, because everything has to have an acronym. So if you look at Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we find very clearly that it is guaranteed the right to be a religious believer, the right not to be a religious believer, and indeed the right to change belief. And it also guarantees the right to express belief, but this part of the right is subject to certain necessary limitations when those are necessary, including to protect the rights of others. The ICCPR, as we call it, the covenant, also guarantees that there is to be no coercion in religion, and I think it's critical to consider that as well. So, what does this tell us overall about the view in international law of what should be the ideal relationship between religion and the state to guarantee human rights? There's a very big debate about that. I can say you can look, for example, at the book written by a scholar named Jerome Temperman, arguing that there is an emerging right to what he calls religiously neutral government. I looked at what some of the UN mechanisms have said about this, and it was interesting to note, I looked at this with a student, that a lot of what the UN human rights mechanisms have said about secularism has been negative in the sense of how secularism, if not carried out in the proper way, could itself violate human rights. But very little attention, unfortunately, paid to the positive aspects of secularism vis-a-vis human rights. And I've been stunned at some of the statements that have come out. For example, Ken Roth, a few years ago, some of you may remember this, the director of Human Rights Watch, an organization which has done some very important work, including defending people who are victims of abuses carried out in the name of religion. But in 2011, in response to some criticisms of the Human Rights Watch World Report that year by women of Muslim heritage, things that were said in that report about Islamism in particular, Ken Roth chose to write that there is no right to separation of religion and state, which I think is a remarkable assertion, especially if you look at the context of what was happening in 2011. So I actually think, going along the lines of Jerome Temperman and perhaps going beyond that, we really have to claim the importance of secularism, as Tasneem said, as a tool, as a framework for guaranteeing a range of human rights. These include the right to freedom of religion or belief, including the right not to believe and to change belief, but also other rights, including the freedom of expression, the right to be free from violence against women and discrimination against women, and the area that I work on as the UN Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights, because there is so much of an overlap between culture and cultural expression and freedom of religion. So in my report to the Human Rights Council in March, which is about fundamentalism, extremism, and cultural rights, I very specifically recommended to states that they need to provide for and protect the separation of religion and state and guarantee religious freedom, including the right to believe, not to believe, and to change one's belief. And in the follow-up report that I'm doing for the General Assembly in October, there is a whole paragraph about secularism in the text, explaining my understanding of the term, explaining very clearly, using a quote from Gita Sehgal, who is here, that this is not about the absence of religion, it's not an anti-religion stance, but it is about a state structure that defends freedom of expression and freedom of religion or belief, where there is no state religion, where law is not derived from God, and where religious actors cannot impose their will on public policy. And I know that this is going to get a great deal of pushback, so I look forward to finding ways to work with all of you to push this report through the UN system and get support for it, because I really think that the struggle for secularism is sort of a key human rights goal in the current moment.
So one of the questions we often get is, what can we do? Like, what can you do to support? I mean, this is a concrete way of supporting. I mean, create pressure through lobby groups on your national government so that they can sort of enable the excellent work Karima is doing in her capacity as a reporter. I'd like to move to the European Parliament. We have a MEP amongst us, and we talked about United Nations, and I am very interested to know about your work inside the Parliament and at the EU level.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Mariam Namazi, along with the Dutch professor Paul Glitter, you remember Mariam, was our first guest in Euromine. For those of you who are not all that familiar with Euromine, we organize lectures, just one or lectures and communication with a commitment to freedom of thought, religion and speech, support for science-based policies, and the integration of all Europeans within a common political space. I am, as you said, a member of the Parliament. I am in ALDE, that is the Liberal group. I'm a free thinker and a liberal. Individuals who hold secular belief and who place their faith in science and tolerance remain our natural allies. In their name, I have frequently addressed parliamentary questions regarding human rights issues to the European Commission and to the High Representative Federica Mogherini. Okay. The most recent include the case of the German satirist Jan Böhmermann, the disappearance of liberal activists in Pakistan, the case of Ebrahim Sharif in Bahrain, extremist homophobic preachers in Europe, and the problem of blasphemy laws. I have also voiced concern with regard to the situation of non-believers in Moscow, Turkey, and in Pakistan. I have directly expressed my concern at the attempt made by the Pakistan authorities to force Twitter and Facebook to disclose information about the users. This information was to be used in order to identify individuals suspected for blasphemy. These are universal values, as has said before Pragma Oder, but are specifically European values, especially now that we are building Europe. And they should be the values we uphold. Freedom does not simply mean multiculturalism. Above all, when the defense of multiculturalism supposes that we become indifferent to the characteristically human search for truth and happiness. I really hope that the European project will come to embody the universal principles that form the backbone of an open society. I must say now that I'm very sad for Brexit because of Brexit, and I hope that it could be reversed. This morning, our friend Anthony Grayling had said me that it could be possible. And he's a very wise man, and I believe him. I hope that could be reversed in the future because it's very, very sad that we are separated. Thank you very much.
If we have individuals in the audience who would like to later also comment on this, I'm personally very interested to know about what Brexit means for a secular Europe and a secular UK. I'll now move to Michael. I understand you have been engaged in lobbying with United Nations, with Council of Europe, with OSSE, the organization. So how do you see this? How do you what are your comments on lobbying for secularism at these institutions?
Well, first of all, we have a policy in Atheist Ireland that when we are promoting atheism and reason, we use the language of philosophy and science. But when we are promoting secularism, we use the language of human rights. And when doing that, we respect the right to freedom of religion as well as the right to freedom from religion. But we use very fundamental principles: the right to freedom of religion or belief, the right to freedom from discrimination, the right to equality before the law. We try to educate the public, first of all, and also our politicians, that these are very fundamental rights. And also we try to highlight with our governments that once they sign up to the various United Nations or Council of Europe treaties, that they are subjecting themselves to an oversight on their human rights obligations that they have to adhere to. And so the main bodies that we engage with are the United Nations, where there's a big distinction to be made in the United Nations between the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is essentially a political body where the states are policing each other, which can be quite compromised and which ends up with things like Saudi Arabia chairing subcommittees of the United Nations Human Rights Council. And on the other hand, the Human Rights Committees, which are the bodies that oversee the obligations of the states under each of the treaties. And those committees are made up of independent human rights experts, and they're not engaged in these political tradings that you get at the council level. They are just examining each country once every few years under each of the treaties to say, here's article such and such of the treaty, here's your behaviour under this, can you explain to us how that behaviour is compatible with your obligations under the treaty? And civil society bodies such as Atheist Ireland are able to both make submissions to those bodies and also go to the meetings as they're happening, brief the Human Rights Committee before they question the state delegation, and then as the session is happening, if the state, as is quite frequent, gives misleading answers, we can, in real time, as the sessions are going on, let the committee members know that that's misleading. Obviously, we have to give them supporting evidence. They're not going to question them on the basis of somebody saying something, but if we give them, here's an example, this is what the law actually says, this is how it's incompatible with this article of the treaty, they will incorporate that into their questions, so we can have a direct involvement there. Another body that's very important to us is the OSCE, which is the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Now, they have, as part of their overall scheme of things, that they have a strand that deals with human rights. They have in Warsaw every year one of the biggest human rights sessions in Europe that goes on for 2 weeks. We go over for the sessions on freedom of religion and belief and the sessions on freedom of expression. And again, in those places, we can highlight before delegations from other states information about the discrepancies between what the states are saying they're doing and what they're actually doing on the ground. Another thing that the OSCE did that is very useful is they have put together a document called the Toledo Guiding Principles on teaching about religions and beliefs in a pluralist society. And that's a document that we use as a go-to in our lobbying in Ireland with the Department of Education, because it provides an objective set of criteria for how a curriculum should be delivered objectively, critically and pluralistically when teaching about religion. And it takes it out of the realms of us just arguing this is what we want and being able to say this is what an independent body of human rights experts, including members of religions, have come up with as a fair way of dealing with the complexities of these situations. Now, the one thing I'll close to bear in mind about this, it's not a magic bullet. They can't enforce what they're recommending, but they do provide a lot of both moral pressure and political weapons that we can then use in our respective countries when lobbying our politicians. Thank you.
Reporting mechanisms, which Michael talked about, can also be very crucial. I know, for example, if you want to force the government of Bangladesh to comment on a specific case, the United Nations, different rapporteurs can be really useful in doing that. We were talking about this before, and you also mentioned that you also work with Ahmadi Muslims, because this is one thing I want to focus a little bit on, because secularism is not only an issue for the secular or the atheists or the humanists. It is also a very crucial burning question for the religious also. Case in point, the Ahmadis, especially in Pakistan, which is a religious state and which is a Muslim state, where a specific group of people are barred from saying the Shahada or saying their prayers or engaging in Islamic rituals. Can you very briefly tell us a little bit about your work with the Ahmadis and other religious groups?
Yes, we work, as I said, I'll preface this by saying that when we are promoting atheism and reason, we are very strong about that, and we do not compromise our belief that atheism is a more reliable worldview than religious or faith-based worldviews. But concurrent with that, when working on secularism, we are happy to work with religious groups who themselves are also secular, that they hold their beliefs as strongly as we hold our beliefs, but that they also want separation of church and state. Because separation of church and state is the only way, in real terms, that you can protect everybody's rights equally. Because we would be as opposed to the state promoting atheism as we are to the state promoting religion. So we work with the Ahmadi Muslims and also with the evangelical Christians in Ireland as three groups with very different worldviews, but who are all discriminated against in Ireland by the support that the Irish state gives to Catholicism mainly and Christianity generally. But also because we all have members of our respective belief groups in Pakistan who are afraid in many cases to speak out for themselves. We made a submission and sent a delegation just a couple of weeks ago to the United Nations Human Rights Committee when they were questioning Pakistan. And we were there as 3 groups from Ireland highlighting the human rights abuses in Pakistan on behalf of people who had passed information to us. And that was a very powerful message, both in terms of its content and also in terms of the symbolism at the United Nations Human Rights Committee of having 3 groups of very different religious views, particularly from an island where, in Ireland, which is seen as ridden with sectarian strife anyway. I think we've moved on from it, but that's certainly the image that we have. It's very important both symbolically and also practically in terms of the input that we were able to make to the committee. So I'd strongly urge people to while continuing to promote our own beliefs philosophically, to be prepared to work with religious groups who also support secularism in the context of separation of church and state.
So, I mean, I'll move from secularism as a protection for religious minorities to secularism as a protection mechanism or ensuring mechanism for women's rights and children's rights. And Amy, you have worked on that for many years now, as I understand. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
I think that secularism is not just a right, it's a necessity if women are to be free, and children's rights, and gay rights, and so on. And the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is entering almost our 40th year, and I'm a co-founder when I was a college student, began because of the battle for abortion rights in the United States. And my mother was an early crusader for legalizing abortion and contraception in the state of Wisconsin. And everywhere we went, it was the Catholic nuns and priests and busted school children filling the Capitol Rotunda and speaking to the legislators about the Bible says abortion is murder. And she went from being a general activist feminist to being an ardent secularist because we realized that we would never be free until our laws were free from religious influence and our social policy. And this is just one example, but it is true throughout the whole civil rights agenda. And unfortunately, we are facing, we saw great successes in the United States, and we are at a very perilous time once again, even though we have a secular constitution. The religious right is, of course, in control of almost everything right now. More than 30 states are completely Republican-dominated, both houses and gubernatorial. The Congress and, of course, the presidency, I liked Dawkins' air quotes, and we have the Supreme Court in jeopardy. And so it has never been clearer to us how important it is that we not only have a secular constitution, as the United States does. We were first among nations. It was the only original thing, really, in our U.S. Constitution. It's godless, and its only references to religion are exclusionary, such as that there should be no religious test for public office. And the First Amendment, with its establishment clause that Congress may not respect an establishment of religion. Well, these are wonderful concepts, but they are not respected. And in fact, it can be a kiss of death for a public official to be known as an atheist in the United States. And the polls always consistently show that atheists are unelectable, that about 50% of the population would not even consider voting for president or vice president if they were known to be an atheist. And we're at the bottom of the social totem pole today with Muslims when it comes to surveys about who would you want someone to marry, who's filling our prisons. They think atheists are all criminals and prostitutes. It's ridiculous. But so it's a PR problem at this point as much as a legal problem, and I think that's probably true globally. So we have a great secular constitution, but can we keep it? And women's rights are hinging on all of this, and we are facing the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which provides most of the contraception in the United States, as well as basic health care for women. And fighting for contraception, I mean, this is ridiculous, not just abortion rights. So we are all fired up about the importance of secular government and constitution, but we have to take this to the court of public opinion and win there.
And I've been listening to you, and what sort of jumps up is this secularism serving the interest of different divergent groups, like the secularists, the atheists, the humanists, the religious minorities, women's rights groups, children's rights groups, democracy activists. And I know, Chris, I mean, you have been involved in building sort of coalitions between diverse groups, serving this ultimate goal of protecting the principle of secularism. I'd like to hear more about that from you.
Okay, thank you, Tasneem. Yes, indeed. I have in the last years, ever since I was the president of the Atheist Society at my university, been involved in various campaigns, bringing together various great activists that are also present here, like Mariam, like Yasmin Rahman, like Hosam Mahmood, like Pragna Patel, on campaigns such as freedom of expression within universities, Universities UK, the gender segregation case that we won, the Law Society case that we won again, and on helping generally with various campaigns concerning gender segregation now. So how do we bring together these secular movement, this inclusive secular movement? Let me start by saying something controversial, maybe controversial. So, and just to be clear, before I say that, I am the guy who's known, I guess, who started his activism as the guy who allegedly terribly offended religious people, allegedly, by wearing a Jesus Mo t-shirt at his university Freshers Fair, was then physically forced to cover up that t-shirt. Later on went on the BBC The Big Questions with the same t-shirt, again uncovered the t-shirt, and yeah, there was a bit of a debate going on there, out there, to put it that way. So I'm not the guy who's quite afraid of offending anybody's sensibilities. However, I think that it can be extremely difficult and dangerous if we effectively exclude many religious people from our movement, from our secular movement, which should be an inclusive movement, by being much more antagonistic, to put it in some way, than maybe we should be. So beliefs are for scrutiny, religious beliefs are for scrutiny, all beliefs are for scrutiny, for ridicule, for lampooning, all of this. When we go to cross that line to thinking or saying that people are stupid because they believe in certain tenets of their faith, I think that's, first of all, wrong, it's not secular, and it's probably very unhelpful in practical terms for building those inclusive coalitions. We have to decide at some point whether we want to have more of an atheist secular movement or an actual secular movement. We know that many religious people are inherently supporting our fight. Most Catholics in this country support the right to abortion. Most Muslims are not fundamentalists. Most Hindus are not Hindutva. But yet, if you look around here, I would say, that's my guess, that most people here are not religious. There should be far more religious people here supporting our fight. And maybe part of the reason why they're not here is that some of them don't like to be put on trial for what their religious beliefs are. And I understand that, because I wouldn't like to be put on trial and asked why I believe in such stupid things as atheism either. And I think that is something that we have to think about. So the thing is, the National Secular Society, of which I'm a council member, has made a decision some years ago. We were an explicitly atheist organization, and we have moved to become a fully secular organization, and we are still on a path to making our organization even more inclusive to religious people, and I think that is a good thing. So, well, in a nutshell, it really is this: if you want to work with people, don't put them on trial for their beliefs. Do criticize them, do scrutinize them and their beliefs, but in the end of the day, secularism is a political movement. It's not based on identity, or shouldn't be based on identity, or shouldn't be based on someone's faith or beliefs about supernatural or more questions of morality or whatever it is. It's a political movement. Let's work together in an inclusive way.
Can I add something very briefly to that? I do agree with you, but I think the inclusiveness should be in the form of alliances. I don't think that it should be at the cost of ceasing to promote atheism and reason and ethical.
I don't think, I'll just have to go ahead and disagree with you there, Mike, if you don't mind. I don't think a secular movement should be based on the promotion of any faith or non-faith. And that includes, by the way, this idea of, for example, we have to promote a good Islam that's better than a bad Islam, or a better Christianity, something like that. That is something that religious people have to make up for themselves, and we should ally with them. But that is not something we should inherently promote in and of ourselves.
Yeah,
as much
very briefly,
good
the point I was making is that you said you had moved from being an atheist movement to being a secular movement. I think you can remain an atheist movement, just as the Ahmadis remain a religion and the evangelicals remain a religion, and still work together in a secular alliance. But we're not expecting the Ahmadis or the evangelicals in Ireland to give up promoting their religion. And equally, I don't think we should give up promoting our worldview either.
What I understood from Chris is that he is making a point from a very strategic point of view to begin with. Is that correct? Like,
it's a strategic point, but it's also a principal point.
Yeah, but I mean, strategic, political, strategizing the political movement, if I can say so. Okay. I'll have to, let's have a discussion on that. I'd like to hear from the audience as well later. I'll now turn to Huzan, and thank you for patiently waiting. You have been working as a cultural worker, and you are the founder of the Culture Project, and you are using cultural word in sort of serving this goal of establishing secularism. And I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much, Mariam Namazi and Council of Ex-Muslims, for organizing such timely and important conference and for inviting me. And secondly, I would really like, and I feel obliged, to always pay tribute to the most courageous Kurdish women and men who are in the forefront of fighting against ISIS, the most dangerous, monstrous, sexist, masculinist, racist forces of our time, of the 19th century. I was actually showing earlier on to my friend Benjamin Kurdish women who are in the neighborhoods taking up arms to actually fight against ISIS. And this is how we are defending secularism. This is how we defend human rights, women's rights, and the right for a society to exist. Secondly, I would like to say that I'm an atheist, and I don't care if that offends anybody here or outside of this place, because we are being offended time and time, and all over the world, everywhere throughout history. Women have been offended, their rights have been violated, and nobody asked them, are you offended? It's us who have been fighting for our own rights on our own, and so many times alone as well. So you know, and I feel like there is so much apologetic, you know, language going on everywhere that I've been, all over the places, even at universities, that is supposed to be the place for scientific research, education, intellectualism, and so on and so forth. I found so much bigotry and backwardness that was shocking, especially in somewhere like UK universities, generally speaking, whereby they just shut you up and they silence you and they call you Islamophobe, full stop, without listening to your story and where you come from and what you have been going through, by the way. For people like us to be there publicly to denounce their religion, it costs our lives, okay? But we do it because it's not a Western or Eastern thing, as other speakers before me emphasized the importance of this movement, the importance of actually being who you want to be. So that's why, for me, defending women's rights, secularism, and so on and so forth, and feminism in general, is not a single issue. It's all related. It's very important when we speak about cultural productions, be it poetry, literature, art, music, and songs, and you name it. It's important for it to exist. It only exists in secular spaces. I mean, you know, everywhere Islamists pop up, straight away they target music, they target, you know, art, they target scientific research. I mean, so many times they've issued fatwas against scientific research. They issued fatwas for books to be burned because some poetry or some parts of the literature criticized something about God or religions and so on. That's why for us, it's very important to raise awareness about feminism and gender issues as well as secularism. We can only function within a secular discourse, and art and music and everything, and women's rights can progress within a secular society, not otherwise. I mean, I just want to comment on some things that was earlier on discussed on the panels before. Why, when it comes to the rights and freedoms of Middle Eastern women, we have to go back to religion and negotiate our rights within Islam? That's bullshit, I'm sorry. Just the example of that girl in short skirt in Saudi Arabia, it shocked and it brought down the entire Saudi Arabian kingdom, let alone going and talking about women's rights within Islamic laws of Saudi Arabia. This is impossible. You cannot actually relegate women to go on about and going to mosque with men. So what? Is that all the freedoms you want me to have, going to mosque with men, or having a female imam, as if we had enough, as if we didn't have enough of male imams, of brainwashing people? Now you want to brainwash women and young girls in a Muslim, this time with a female imam? This kind of tokenism of some Middle Eastern women or Asian women arguing for an Islamic feminism or so-called women's rights within Islam, it's only a blow to the women's rights movements that is secular, that is progressive, and that is leftist and egalitarian. And that's why I cannot really support or agree with such, to argue for women's rights within such frameworks or within any religions, be it Christianity, Judaism, whatever, Islamism, you name it. And thirdly, I would like to say that so many times in the West, they think they have to support Islamism because they cannot separate between Muslims and Islamism, honestly. And even the most intellectual people I came across, you know, these debates, whereas it's actually what we are doing is defending ordinary Muslims. It's not about that religion have no space, but it's actually us, millions of Muslims who have no space, who have no place to express themselves, to express their creativity, to basically coexist. I mean, Kurdistan is probably the only place in the Middle East that so many religions can live together. You have church, you have everything, various religions, but still that is in danger. I mean, we are still in the fight with ISIS, and as you know, I don't have to tell you what ISIS did to the Yazidi Kurdish women, and that still so many thousands of them are captured by them, selling them as sex slaves in the slave markets, you know, raping them over and over again and treating them as slaves. This is the kind of ISIS ideology. If you don't accept it as Islam, I'm sorry, it's one of its versions. People keep on telling us, well, Islam has many versions. Well, this is probably one of them. I mean, taking the enemy's wives and daughters, it has been done all over the past 1,400 years. It's nothing new of Islamist movements and Islamist ideology and governments in the region. Stalking, killing of homosexual people, and lots of other issues that is going on. That's why we have to, wherever we are, we have to create secular spaces, be it through art, through poetry, through scientific research, through education, and through women's organizing as well. For me, there's only one form of organizing, and that has to be secular and feminist.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to especially thank you for mentioning the Kurds. I mean, we have had lots of discussion today about left and regressive left and progressive left and liberal left. And unfortunately, I had the feeling that by left we mean Western left. I mean, that is an error we should try to avoid, because the most leftist secular democratic participatory movement right now is the struggle, the fight is being fought by the Kurds in ISIS territory, and that is something we need to recognize whenever we talk about left and right and all that. Before I open for questions, I would like to just ask my panelists if you just want to very quickly comment on the discussion so far. So I'll start with Chris, if you have any comments.
My only comment would be that I want to make sure that what I said earlier is being understood in the right way. Being an atheist is a form of resistance in the face of religious privilege and states that are often theocratic or non-secular. Being an atheist is something important that we obviously should support as a secular movement. I still disagree with Mike that we need to promote atheism for that reason. But secularism obviously does not equate for not promoting faith or not promoting atheism. I think the issue we need to think about, how do we make allies and how do we get a movement together that challenges fundamentalism in the broadest sense, a big society, a big tent movement, and therefore we need to make some choices. That's what I think. Thank you.
Very quickly, thank you. Very quickly, Teresa, if you have any comments.
Yes, just to say that I have a strong commitment with secularism. I think that secularism is one of the most important pillars for the construction of Europe, the United Europe. We have an important migration of people that have a political and religious agenda that worry us very much, but also as the policy speaker before has said that about his country, the problems that he has. There are countries in Europe that are, the religion is awakening now, as in Poland and Hungary. I think that is a big danger for these constructions. Just to say that one of my main concerns in the parliament is the defense of this idea of the secularist Europe.
Annie, your quick comments.
I was going to say I thought that Charles Bradlaugh might be a little surprised at the change with the National Secular Group, but I think it's fine. I think there are different ways to get at the same problem, and it's fine to have basically a state church lobbying group. But at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, we don't separate the two things, because when we say there shouldn't be religion in government, then the largely religious population says, why not? The Bible is a good book. It should be invoked in our government. I mean, you're running into this circular argument with them. And I think that when we see what has happened to outed atheist bloggers and authors in Bangladesh, who saw the movie, we know what happened to Bona and her husband, because they were atheists, that it's ever more critical that those of us who are safe to come out as non-believers, as freethinkers and atheists, must do so Human progress and survival depends on free thought, the use of reason in forming our opinions.
Thank you.
I think we need to be incredibly conceptually clear that when we're talking about secularism, we're talking about secularism, and when we're talking about atheism, we're talking about atheism, and those two things may overlap in some places, but they are not contiguous. We have been making this point again and again when people in certain regions are accused of being atheist, when they advocate secularism, so there's a common misconception about this. I think the struggles of atheists are very important, but they are separate, and we really have to maintain the clarity. I like what you said about the different strategies you use when you're lobbying for one thing versus another. Another thing I think we urgently have to do is to reclaim the human rights space, which is not only, as the brilliant Pragna Patel said earlier, being undermined by fundamentalists, but almost even worse, it's being used by them to promote their and even justify their abuses of human rights. And we see tremendous prejudice against the concept of secularism itself in much of the international human rights movement. I think that that is something we absolutely have to come together to challenge. And I hope that in the remaining 24 hours plus that we have here, we will start talking about strategies, because at the end of the day, what's most important is not how we fight amongst ourselves here, but how we fight together when we get back out there tomorrow, which is a very lonely place. And I just want to give one, very quick thing that my suggestion of one small thing people can do. I want to talk about following up from my report to the Human Rights Council and lobbying in support of the next one. And if anyone is interested in meeting me and my colleague Joanne Bouchard from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights tomorrow during the break from 11:55 to 12:30 out there to talk about it, please see us there. Thank you.
And also, please sign up for the mailing list. I think your office puts out something like that, and you'll receive regular updates. Michael, very quickly.
Yeah, when I talk about promoting atheism and reason and why it's important, what I mean is that belief in gods is based on faith, and faith-based worldviews are less reliable for both understanding reality and understanding morality than are non-faith-based worldviews. And even if we got a secular world where in the context of separation of church and state, where the state was not giving any privilege to either religion or atheism, it would still be important from our perspective to persuade people, not by force, but to persuade people that reason and atheism are a better and more reliable worldview. So I think it is important to do both, to maintain the integrity of our worldview, while also being prepared to work with integrity in alliances with religious people who also agree with separation of church and state.
Thank you.
Well, to me, I think the most natural thing to human beings should be atheism, because when we are born, we actually have no nationality, no religion, no language, no ideology. It's all constructed and created. And I think we should not, for the sake of secularism, we should not brush atheism under the carpet because it's a bit controversial. No, I disagree with that completely. And I think we really have to keep that momentum going, and that the right to atheism is a fundamental human right, and it is important for so many people who do not organize their lives around what somebody said 2,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, whatever. So this is a very basic and fundamental human right, in my opinion. Also, I just wanted to emphasize on one important issue that so many families in the Middle East probably, or at least from my own experience, they are ordinary Muslims, but that doesn't mean they are fundamentalists. That doesn't mean they advocate Sharia law. I grew up in a Muslim family, and still some of my sisters, they wear veils. Some of my other brothers, they practice Islam, and I'm an atheist, and we all love each other, and there's no problem. You don't have to tear families apart and to take up arms against each other and kill each other because you are this or you are that. I mean, as I said, ideologies, religions, and politics, and so on and so forth, you can change them, you can adopt them, you can just basically leave them, and you don't really have to sacrifice one for the sake of another. And what has been the dominant discourse is that as if Islam is in danger of being wiped out from the planet. That's not true. It's actually Islam is making, or Islamists are making demands everywhere in the world, and it's going ahead for them. They have mosques and religious schools and Islamic schools for children to brainwash and so on and so forth, which we have to argue for those to be closed down. And you are allowed to practice whatever religion you have, but you do not have to brainwash your child with it. You know, I'm a feminist, but I don't necessarily brainwash my child into feminism. I want her to grow up and to explore and to know. And in fact, she studied all religions. I didn't even impose my atheism on her. I wanted her to find out by herself. I mean, every day she came home with a joke about religions. And, you know, it's not my fault. When you are actually given a space to think, to be who you are, to be independent thinker, then you can decide. When you actually decide for somebody from a very early age, then it's very difficult for them to come out of it. I mean, so many youngsters in UK, they just blindly wear burqas and veils and they're at universities.
Yes, I mean, you do, like, you are referring to religious education also, if I understand correctly. Thank you very much. I'm now going to open the floor for questions from the audience. I'll take three at a time, one from the right, from middle and left. And thank you for Bruce and Iram for doing this. Who is the right winger? Okay, the lady at the back there. Yes, can you just, in the white shirt, yes.
Sorry, just a quick question for Karima. Karima, you defend cultural rights in UN fora. How are these cultural rights different from group rights, which conflict with individual rights? How can we ensure that individual rights will be protected if we're defending cultural rights?
Thank you. And then I'm going to take a question from Maria. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your contributions. I wanted to just comment on this issue because I am really frustrated about it, to be honest, and I'm exploding out of frustration. And the thing is that I think we can work together on many different issues, even though we don't agree, right? For example, we can work, all of us together, on secularism, even though some of us might be believers and some of us might hate religion, for example. It's possible. And but we should be asked to leave everything else of ourselves out the door just because it might offend someone. And it's interesting because we never demand that of the religious. We never say, I won't work with you as a Muslim woman on secularism because your beliefs offend me. And let me tell you, Islam offends me. It offends me greatly. My whole life has been bulldozed by this religion. But every time we go into the public space with our secular sisters who are religious, some of them, not all of them, because we work with lots of great women, they keep telling us, well, you know, atheism and secularism is separate. Yes, but I'm still an atheist. Can I not speak? And we are accused of not being inclusive. Yes, Karima, we are accused of not being inclusive. If I say that I think Islam has something to do with Islamism, some of our sisters won't even speak to me anymore. They don't want me included in any of the meetings. Well, learn to live with it. The point of this conference is that we have just as much right to say what we think, to criticize religion, to reject religion. And can I tell you something else? It's hurtful. It hurts. Because I don't expect anything from the Islamists. I don't expect anything from the far right and the fascists. But I expect things from those who call themselves secularists and then try to silence me when I want to criticize religion. I ask you, I accuse you of betraying me and betraying this movement when there are so many people suffering under Islam's rule and suffering for being ex-Muslims. Where are we when you speak about your secularism? Where are we? We are not anywhere. And when we come and do everything we can to support this movement, we're told, oh, you're offending me. Well, get used to it. Get used to it. We exist too. We have a right to say what we want. And we can be together in this fight for secularism, but don't make us deny who we are.
Sorry. Yes, you please. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Nadia Alfani. Franco-Tunisian filmmaker, and I want to say, 2 years ago I was here for the first conference, and I was asking to translate, the French term laïcité in every language of the people, representing their country here, because I think secularism is not the good word, Laïcité is a principle. It's something could be written in the, how do you say, human rights, and in the law in the countries, and I'm glad, to hear you about Europe, I think we have to ask all our country to put this principle in the first article, in the law, in the fundamental law, in the constitution, because this is the best way to protect all the religion, if you want to believe, but we are atheists and we need laicity, because we cannot live in freedom if we don't have laicity. For me, the laicity is the first step for democracy in our country. In Tunisia, after revolution, the first demand from the youth was, like it's written in your photography here, liberté, démocratie, laïcité. It was the first demand from the youth. I made a movie about this, and I was attacked. I was the first one, artist, intellectual, as you want, attacked in Tunisia after revolution, because I was fighting for laicity. And I cannot tell about what happened to me after, because you can imagine, about Islamists, what they did to me, but the worst thing was the reaction of the left in Tunisia, of the Democrats. They asked, the freedom to Ranouchi, who was in Great Britain for 20 years because he was in charge on justice in Tunisia because he was a terrorist. And the Democrats in Tunisia asked for freedom to him to go back to Tunisia. And after he took the power, and now he is Islamizing Tunisia, and Tunisia is lost for democracy. I can tell you now, I'm really, really sad to tell you that Tunisia is lost for democracy. There is no more revolution in Tunisia.
Karima, there was a question directed to you, so I'd like you to start by responding to that. I think it was about collective rights and individual rights.
So I think the question is actually more generally about the concept of cultural rights, which are perhaps one of the lesser known parts of the human rights regime. They are covered both by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which in Article 15 guarantees the right to take part in cultural life without discrimination. And I have been very clear, as has my predecessor, the Pakistani feminist Farida Shahid, that cultural rights are not the same thing as cultural relativism, and they are to be understood within the context of the universal human rights framework. They are not a departure from that framework. And Farida Shahid wrote a very interesting report, for example, about women's cultural rights and the need to not only see the ways in which culture has been used as an excuse for violations of women's human rights, but also to fight for women's equal right to participate in culture, including the decision of which cultural practices to leave behind or to jettison for human rights reasons. So that is very much the established framework now in the cultural rights area. I'm not really sure whether to respond to Mariam's comment or not, because I'm not exactly sure if it was directed at me, but I think we have to decide whether we're willing to have a discussion in which everyone can feel comfortable. And I can tell you, maybe lots of people don't feel comfortable in this discussion. And it's not about, I think everyone is free to be whoever he or she is, absolutely. It's about presuming that we all in the room have the same worldview, and making sure that when we say we and our, that is an inclusive we and our. And I am happy for that inclusivity to be based on the diversity of who everyone is. And I certainly didn't mean anything I said to silence atheists simply to remind us that this is a secular conference and not everyone comes to the table with the same worldview. So I do sincerely hope that we can find a way to have these difficult discussions and to work together beyond them. But I don't think it's terribly helpful to accuse people of betraying the movement when those people work 24 hours a day towards the same goals. We have to be able to transcend, I think, that way of addressing people when we disagree with them.
Please, would you like to, yes, yes, you would like to comment? Yes.
Member of the Culture Committee, but also I'm a Vice President of the Delegation of MINET. I visit the countries of the north of Africa, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia. We are very worried about Tunisia also because it was an example for everybody, the history of the freedoms that nobody knew in the area. But now I know that this country is in a very difficult moment. I'm very sorry to say this, but I hope that everything will...
I'll just move on so that I can take more comments and questions from the audience. Anyone on the left? Geeta, yes, please.
Well, sometimes it's, I'm Geeta Saigon, Center for Secular Space. Karima very kindly quoted from my definition of secularism. It's an honor to be in a UN report, particularly one written by Karima Benoon, and particularly when I've really gone outside the framework of the official human rights movement by the stand I took against Amnesty International and their relationship to a jihadi. So it's really wonderful to be recognized there. But I thought I would talk a little bit, just very briefly, about my journey on these questions. Because I grew up in a free-thinking family. You know, I didn't have 1 second of discrimination on the grounds of my religious belief. And that family were a family that fought colonialism and that really built, and that are the forgotten history of the human rights framework. They fought against colonial domination in the UN Charter. They fought for the right of colonial subjects who were not recognized as rights. They fought for women's rights. They fought for the inclusive language, all human beings are equal. A very feminist who isn't in Wikipedia on this issue. I just looked up a UDHR page. One of the reasons why you shouldn't really always trust Wikipedia. The person who actually put some of this language in that I talked about, all human beings are equal in dignity and rights, and endowed with conscience and reason. You know, these came as much from the East as from the West, and from the battle against the British Empire. I didn't have to fight for my atheism, and like Chris, I would always see myself as not an aggressive atheist. A great deal of my work was spent defending minority religions under attack. And being an Indian, it meant defending Christians and Hindus whose mosques and churches were being attacked, who were being individually lynched, and so on. But I also, with Mariam, began to work with the ex-Muslim movement. And I know from reading about it, and from the people that I was on the platform with this morning, and from young people who have talked about it, is that they didn't come from that privilege of not having to be aggressive in their atheism. And they weren't, in fact, aggressive. Just simply to pronounce it was to, and I put it in language of a declaration that I hope you'll read in your pack, is to fall into a human rights void. I would have said a black hole, but then some scientists would say you don't understand what a black hole is. But, you know. So void is a term I understand. It is to completely lack all human rights protection. On the panel this morning, there were people who simply because they are atheists, not because they've ever offended anybody intentionally or anything, they just declare their atheism and they are arrested and tortured, put before a military tribunal, lose custody of their children, lose their home, lose their job. They lose every single civil and political right going. And this conference is a secular conference, but it's also the 10th anniversary, maybe some of you don't know, of the ex-Muslims organization. And that is, in a way, an identity-based movement. They didn't just declare themselves atheists, they stood as a beacon to other atheists, to other people, that atheism was possible, that you can challenge apostasy laws and blasphemy laws. So we're at a particular moment when the arguments that we've used in the past don't always work. And I work with Karima, and I work with Mariam, and I don't agree with everything Richard Dawkins said, but actually, coincidentally, I was contacted by a young man, I don't know, actually he may not be young, but anyway, I think he's on a listserv of queers against Israeli terrorism, who had been campaigning against Dawkins to ask him to be platformed on this radio station, which was talked about in the morning. And he had written a letter to the radio station saying, Richard Dawkins was an inspiration to me on many counts. And he had actually written to this listserv, which was campaigning against Professor Dawkins, and saying, please write to the radio station and talk about his right to appear on the platform, and it's really important to hear him. So these arguments are going on in many different situations. Discomfort has to be a part of our movement. We have sat in many meetings where we sit among religious people and we defer and we, recognize that they're oppressed by racism, by religious bigotry, and so on. There are very few meetings of the 40 or so years I've been active where atheists are allowed to be public about the receiving end of their oppression. I think we have to hold both these things in mind. I know exactly what you were saying, Chris. We face a lot of, there is sometimes white bigotry from atheists who assume things about Islam, and I've seen Mariam support my colleague Yasmin Rahman, who's going to speak tomorrow, who is a believer, and she has, Yasmin got up and defended her when young atheists were attacking her simply for being a believer on a platform. And in fact, she was defending, it was a platform, it was a meeting about apostasy and blasphemy and Sharia, and Yasmin takes great risks all the time, speaking as a believer to defend ex-Muslims and other atheists. So we do all this stuff all the time, and we are going to have our disagreements, and we are going to get upset. I don't think we can demand that people don't feel uncomfortable. I'd like to say to my Muslim friends, it is going to be uncomfortable sometimes. There are people who are going to think that, religious belief is not a basis for managing your life. And I think you have to be prepared to listen to it, because we have all been defending people when they're being lynched. We haven't talked about the Hindutva movement. You'll hear tomorrow about it. I hope, we make sure that you hear about it. People think that only the monotheists can be fundamentalists. No. Any religion can take up a violent religious fundamentalism, and in the case of India, they're attacking people on the basis that they're beef eaters. They've invented this new term, you're a beef eater, so you're sitting on a train and you can be murdered by a gang of thugs who get on the train and say and atheists have been murdered in exactly the same ways for a very, very long time. And it's only atheists who are defending other atheists in general. I think the human rights movement defends the symptoms of the attack. I mean, they may defend the individual atheists, and let me tell you, supporting people who are in jail for blasphemy laws and so on, we have not had money from the major human rights organizations. It's smaller organizations.
Gita, sorry,
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop, but I'm saying that these are multiple problems. We are going to disagree. They're going to be really, really, really upsetting, but we have to hold the space of secularism. I agree with Karima that they're not contiguous, they're not the same. But quite often secularists defend themselves by saying we're not atheists. And sometimes secularists are not atheists, and we have to recognize that. But sometimes secularists are atheists, and they do have human rights. Thank you.
Very, very nice people. I mean, one thing we do recognize, yes, I'm coming to you. Can I just, yes. One thing we must recognize that the secularist movement or the secular movement, I mean, we are not a body of just one opinion. I mean, we have diversity of opinions. We disagree with each other, we get very emotional, and yes. But one thing is that our diversity actually makes us stronger, probably the strongest political force out there. So with that, yes, you have been waiting for long, yes.
Yes, thank you. I don't understand this discussion. Chris, you want respect for believers and non-believers based on human rights and with separation of church and state, because it is the principle of secularism. Do I understand well? Yes. You want respect for both, for people. But why you want respect for ideas? Why you don't accept that we can criticize and even mock and even more bad, maybe, say about ideas which are, in our eyes, not very clever, or not, for example, based on scientific evidence. You know that such approach leads, like in Poland, to the decision of Deputy Minister of Education to introduce creationism as teaching to schools because everything is equal. Creationism, he says, evolutionary theory, all that are hypotheses and should be in the school curriculum. I don't agree on it. Again, respect for people, but not for ideas.
Thank you. I am going to say, sorry, I have not been fair to the writing list. I am going to take a question from here, lady. Yes, you. And this is the last question. Please be brief.
Okay, it's to Karima, and it's a kind of a technical question. I was a bit concerned about, you're talking about secularism as a human right, and I find that in the UN documents and things like that, it is a bit woolly. They never come out directly and say that. So how can we move that forward? I find that at the European Court, they have defined secularism as a philosophical conviction worthy of respect in a democratic society, just the same as you could say they respect religions or they're under freedom of religion and belief. But secularism in the European Court comes under belief, but in the UN documents, it doesn't seem to, there's nothing there that defines it in that way. And the only way I can think of that they said, in relation to Ireland, they said in the document once that parents are denied access to a secular education. So you're denied something, that you have a right to something. But I haven't ever seen any of the documents saying that it sees secularism as a philosophical conviction with the same rights under freedom of religion and belief. And how can we move that forward within the human rights framework?
Thank you very much. I hate myself because, you know, like the debate is sort of heating up and I have to wrap up now. I'll give, so that was the last question I took. I'll give the floor to Karima for her quick concluding comments.
I think it's a very important question and a very difficult one, and I can't answer it briefly, so I'll just say one thing and I'd be happy to talk to you quickly afterwards. Clearly there's nothing specific in the human rights documents about a right to secularism. I mean, this is very clear, but I think there's two ways it enters. One is that it could be argued to be sort of a belief and that would be protected by freedom of religion or belief, Article 18, and I think the Human Rights Committee is very clear that it would include beliefs like that, although I'm not aware of specific language that makes that a point. But it is also, and I think Tasneem made this point very well in his opening remarks, about a framework which is essential for the enjoyment of other rights. including freedom of religion or belief for anyone, whatever their beliefs are, including the rights of minorities, which someone mentioned this morning, and Tasneem mentioned again as well, in this area, for which secularism is a critical bulwark. And I think there's been this huge backlash against secularism in the human rights world, and we really have to challenge that and turn that around.
Thank you.
We can't hear you.
Sir, I'm really sorry. I cannot take your question right now. Thank you. You can actually ask the panelists after the event, okay? Who's on? Your concluding comments.
Well, to me, secularization is a process. It cannot be minimized into a declaration by a particular institution or a government per se. I mean, we've seen many secular states that roll back later on various rights and freedoms and so on. So I think for me, the momentum is within the society, is within the grassroots activism and writing and intellectualism, as well as creativities that to turn secularism into a process whereby it will be difficult to roll it back, really. I mean, whatever other declarations and so on, I mean, with my due respect to Karima, and I love the work you are doing, but for example, just to give you an example about the Iraq war by the Allies, there were tons of UN resolutions and nobody really gave a damn about any of them, including the people who were at the top seats of the UN. So let's not be really, kind of taken by that. For me, secularization is a process. Whatever everyone or each of us are doing, it has to go back to the grassroots. It has to go back to actually transforming the society into a secularized society whereby people are free, women are free, creativity is free, and freedom for all religions and from all religions as well. Thank you.
I was afraid this was going to happen, and this is what I specifically said. Lampooning, criticizing, satirizing religious beliefs is completely fine in a secularist framework, and it's something that I have done, as I explained. Attacking religious believers and the dignity or the intelligence of religious believers is also fine, and people want to do that. But that is not something that is inherently secularist in and of itself. People can do that, but that's fine. But apart from that, I really hope that, I know there are very many very great atheists here and whose work I've been supporting for the last years. I really hope that nobody thinks that I've been trying to silence them, betray them with notions of offense or anything like that. For me, this is very clear. Secularism, yes, by all means, people expression, yes, by all means, in all circumstances. Promotion of personal beliefs about deity and supernatural beings, I think that's a different question.
Thank you. Teresa.
Well, for me, a secular state is a state where these people are not biased, who organize society, that allows free thinking, free speech, that promotes science, and has a clear separation between churches and religion and politics. So it's the way that we have organized our life daily in Europe and in that area that we call Occident.
Thank you. Michael, your concluding comments.
Yeah, I suppose in Ireland we have, not just in theory, but in practice, we have an alliance with Ahmadi Muslims and evangelical Christians on the issue of secularism. So this isn't just theory, this is working in practice. Now, possibly it comes down to personal chemistry and just the integrity and trust of the individuals, because the evangelicals and the Ahmadis in Ireland both have leaderships that do actually defend atheist rights in the same way as we will defend their rights. But we're all three happy to do that on the understanding that outside of our secular alliance, they will still be promoting their beliefs and we will still be promoting our beliefs about atheism. And that's the essence of secularism, is that nobody should have to give up the right to promote what they genuinely believe in a truly secular society. Thank you.
Thank you. Annie.
Well, may I say amen? I think that it's very important to have different ways of promoting secularism, and there can be purely state church lobbies made up of believers and non-believers, or just believers or just non-believers. But I do think that ultimately it is really essential that we freethinkers, non-believers, atheists, whatever, do get a place at the table and do promote our viewpoints. If we were waiting for religionists to come up with the idea of separation of church and state, it wouldn't happen. It's a product of the Enlightenment, and something to be very proud of.
One of the pluses of chairing a panel is that no matter how smart your co-panelists are, you get the final word. I personally think that we cannot talk about rights without talking about secularism. And one example is the non-derogable right to life. And we watch the film, and world over, if we read the human rights instruments and read the details about our right to life, and then we look at the religious law of punishing apostasy, for example, absolutely incompatible with each other. So if we want to establish, create, develop a society based on human rights, we must actually build a secular society. With that, thank you very much for listening to us.
And thank you, Ashley, for that smart sharing of the panel. A lot of discussion. We have a lot more tomorrow. But it's time now, before we introduce the next speaker, I'd like to sort of mention to you that this conference wouldn't have been possible without support from many organizations. I just wanted to name them here very quickly. Alliance of Liberal and Democrats for Europe, Atheist Alliance International, Bread and Roses TV, Centre for Secular Space, Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, Centre for Free Inquiry, Cultural Project for Art, Feminism and Gender, Equal Rights Now, Euromind, FEDNA, Freedom from Religious Foundation, Houseman Bookshop, National Secular Society, One Love Road, Secularism is Women's Issue, Sample Black Sisters, and Richard Dawkins Foundation. But we thank all of the groups for sponsoring and supporting this conference. We have a lot more discussion tomorrow to come. However, we have one more speaker, which Iram is going to introduce.
Our final speaker for the evening is Shamila bin Habib. She's raised in Algeria, where her parents were engaged in social and political causes. They had to flee and then went to Paris. There she organized groups that fought against the oppression of Algerian women and some of the oppression unleashed by France itself. So I'll allow Geneva to come up here and talk about what she does. Thank you.
Hello, I am Jamila Ben Habib, and I am very happy and honored to be with you today, and also for this opportunity of you offered me to share my thoughts about a matter that worries all of us, which is political Islam. My first words are indeed for Mariam and her amazing team. I would never thank you enough, not only for having organized this beautiful event, but also for the tremendous efforts you dedicated over the last months to make this great meeting possible. Thank you, Mariam. Also, dear friends, I would ask for your indulgence, since my English is not my first language, and actually this is the first time ever I am delivering a speech in English. I am glad to do so in your nice company. So, dear friends, I warmly thank you in advance for your patience and tolerance. In our times, and this more than ever, we need to talk and to speak. We need to express and to share our views. We need to write and to create. But this need to think freely and to freely express our thoughts is now threatened. First, because of Islamist terrorism, which every day kills many people all around the world. But also because of this terrible censorship, which targets all those who only want to exercise their free will and to live as free citizens who are not under the control of religious dogmas. Dear friends, to this regards, we are in a bad shape, but you already knew it, right? I also wish to thank all of you for your persistent belief in these projects and for having responded so warmly to Mariam's call. This is a tangible proof of the moving force we are now building, and this because we are convinced that political Islam is now a fatality. Yes, we can fight against it, but for fighting in an efficient way, we need to make the right diagnosis and also to make the right decisions and the right strategies. Yes, we are a real force, and it's still too modest in front of the huge task that needs to be done. We are a force which is not only willing, but that is also determined to grow. It's up to us, and we absolutely must get here. I am just back from the Avignon Theatre Festival in France, invited by Charlie Hebdo teams to take a part of the festival, where it has been very difficult to find a theatre that was willing to allow the expression of the words of Charles, who was Charlie Hebdo's director and who, as you all know, was killed in this sad day of January 17, 2015. It's true that the subjects exposed in Charles' work are sensitive, since the play is an adaptation of Charles' posthumous books, which the title is Lettres aux escrocs de l'islamophobie qui font le jeu des racistes, which the translation is a letter to the intellectual who use Islamophobia and play into the hands of racists. But how come we must now in France be overly careful when it's about religion? Can you imagine that it's now difficult, if not dangerous, to laugh about religion, especially when it's about Islam? And this, my friends, happened in Voltaire's motherland. But determination finally paid off. 5 performances of the play were held between July 14 and 19 at the Théâtre de Loul. The room was always full. The audience allowed the audience to exchange views about secularism. And This is nothing compared to the tremendous destructive force of political Islam in Muslim countries, where freedom of thoughts is under attack, if not destroyed. As you know, political Islam has ravaged many Muslim countries, and unfortunately, it has made its way in Western democracies. How come this is so terrible evil can expand here and there, almost everywhere, with such quickness? How has it all begun? Why this awful regression? And this is the symptom of what? How can we explain the complicity of Western governments and also the cowardness of their elites in this story that now concerns all of us? Those are some of questions that worries me for more than 25 years. I mean, since the day my motherland, Algeria, went through some of the darkest pages of its history when an Islamist political party named Front Islamique du Salut and its armed ranks were determined to transform Algeria into an Islamic state like Iran. During those times, at the beginning of the 19th, we would have never imagined Algeria would fall into terrorism in such a way. Where that violence came from. Algeria was a country of all hopes, with a real potential for development, but which has failed to prioritize the right things in the right way. Algeria, which is an authoritarian country ruled by a single-party regime, terribly lacked democracy. Societal issues were underestimated, and the focus was concentrated on economy and social services. Human rights and individual freedom were totally forgotten. Separation of powers between the state and religion, which in the case means separation between the state and Islam, has not been dedicated as a constitutional principle. Freedom of conscience have never been recognized. On the contrary, the Constitution stipulated, and still does, that Islam is the religion of the state. Is it true, this breach, that starting from the first days of our national independence, the Islamists penetrated deeply into the Algerian society? They investigated mainly two spheres, school and family. Starting in the early 1918, Algerian school got Islamized, with teachers who came from some Middle East countries like Egypt or Syria. Actually, many of those teachers were members of the Muslim Brotherhood, whom the Ba'athist regime wanted to get rid of, and who got into Algeria thanks to the Arabization policy. All those young people who were trained in those schools of ignorance, hate, and despair have been sacrificed by the regime. Many become themselves killers who were willing to cut off the lives of the most brilliant amongst our citizens. The second sphere of the Islamist conquest of power was the family. In 1984, Algeria adopted a family code. This code was directly inspired by the Sharia law. It legalized repudiation and polygamy. It also puts the woman under the guardianship of men. It authorizes any husband to correct his wife. But how one man should correct his wife? That is the question. How long must be the stick? This is how family becomes the first laboratory of violence. When in 1989 Algeria renounced the single-party regime, then accepted the multi-party system, the legalization of Islamist party happened, which was followed by a military conflict between the Islamist parties, armed forces, and the world society itself. There was for us only two options left: to resist or to abdicate. And many Algerians choose to resist and risk their lives for it. Women were at the front row. They were guilty of the basic facts of being women. The Islamic armed group, JIA, demanded that all women should wear the Islamic veil. It was literally the veil or death. And many Algerian women refused to wear it. Many got killed. This is why I developed a deep repulsion for all kinds of Islamic veil, no matter if they are small or large, or partially covering the face or the body. I left Algeria in 1994 because of death sentence pronounced by a group called FIDA, which targeted my whole family. My mom and dad were both intellectuals who committed themselves into social and political struggles. So, as thousands of our fellow Algerians did during those times, we took the path of exile and we landed in France. To me, France was no stranger country. I know this country's language and culture, and I was familiar with its codes. But I was up to a huge surprise when, right after we had settled in Saint-Denis in Paris, not suburban, I found out there were in that very area many Islamist circles which were not subject to the government rule. Were there similarity between the Algerian situation and what I witnessed in France? Certainly so. The Algerian Islamists found in Western democracies protective regimes that offered them a second chance. The very chance they themselves denied it to those who fought for democracy in Algeria. Algerian Islamist group became bigger than bigger in whole Europe, as did the Muslim Brotherhood during the 60s. Terrorists attacked France as soon as 1995 and were perpetrated by dynamic and well-organized terrorist groups. Yet, some people within the political left found ways to excuse and to justify the terrorists, and rather blamed France's colonialism or the Algerian government and militaries or bad social conditions, and so forth. So for that regressive left, the guilty as not the real guilty, and the victim as not the real victim. The victims became the guilty. This was the beginning of a tremendous misunderstanding, which lasted since then and which keeps growing. And cultural relativism keeps gaining ground. Confusion settles down into minds. Many amongst those whose profession and jobs is to resist to Islamist totalitarianism, I mean the academic and journalists, became Islamist friends. As for politicians, most of them are motivated by two things: money and re-election. When we realize the many diplomatic opportunities and possibilities of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, and and others can get thanks to their textbooks, we can guess as well the degree of the penetration of Islamism into our democracies. In Canada, where I live since 2 decades, things got even worse, especially since the election almost 2 years ago of Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. That man is so close with the Islamists that he even openly supports them, especially the Muslim Brotherhood organizations like the Islamic Society of North America, which incidentally published a kind of victory statement the very evening Trudeau won the last federal election. The official press release can be easily found on the internet. And one of the first political acts that was made by Trudeau as the new Prime Minister was to have his Minister of Justice to call a woman who previously won a legal battle. She fought for the right to wear the niqab at her citizenship swearing ceremony. Since then, Trudeau keeps favoring the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamists in any way he can. And for this, he uses the mighty means of the Canadian government. For example, he appointed a parliamentary secretary of foreign affairs as a member of parliament who is very close, if not a full member of the Muslim Brotherhood. So, my friends, this is how Canada is now led by that shiny but not bright superstar of the world's media system called Justin Trudeau. So when I told you at the beginning of this speech that we are in a pretty bad shape, maybe that thought was influenced directly by what we witness on a daily basis in Canada. Just to conclude, those are a few things I wanted to share with you. You will certainly understand how huge our task can be. But I know I can count on all of you to block the way to Islamofascism. As all of you, I will do my best to make this possible. Together we should convince more and more citizens, not matter where they are. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Jamila, thank you. Now we had a long day. We are going to wrap up tonight with a bit of art protest that Victoria Guggenheim is going to introduce. And then we're going to have music by Shelley Segal before we have cocktail and an exhibition, which I'll tell you later about that in a minute. Victoria Guggenheim.
Thank you very much. Right. This is going to take all of you now in order to make this work. So every last one of you, I need to get off of your seats right now. Right now. And you, all of you now. Perfect. Tuck your chairs in. Packet manners, come on. Fantastic. So, this piece that I've created with all the CEMB is called 99 Red Balloons. And the idea is that every single last balloon stands for someone who has been persecuted or murdered for being an apostate and a blasphemer. With some of these particular tags that are going to be on here, it's going to say your name here. And it's red because it signifies a target. Yeah. And you. And you. And you too. And you. All of you. And you. And you. Keep going. And you. And you too, man. Just here with the blonde hair. And you with the striped jackets. Every last one of you, go and grab a balloon and come back to your place. And you too. All of you. Sir with the blue shirt, I'm pointing to you. And you. Guy here with the navy shirt, I'm pointing to you. And you, with the beige shirt. Perfect, yes, go back, go balloon. And remember to come back to your place.
Maybe they can give me enough one.
And you guys too, now it's your turn. Go get a balloon. You, sir, with blazer. And you two, as well at the back. And you, sir. That's it, keep going. Sir, I'm noticing a distinct lack of balloon. What's happening? Oh, okay. Can someone get this lovely man a balloon? What's it? Keep going. And you, sir, and you did have a balloon as well. Yeah. And you, ma'am. And you, just there. Keep going. Nearly there, guys. And you, sir, at the back with the lovely long hair. Yes, you. I'm pointing to you, just there. You? Yes, you. And you. Is anybody else who wants a balloon? And else are coming through. And you need a balloon as well? Me? You have a balloon? Excellent. That's it, keep going. Nearly there. Okay, we need one more brave soul to get one more balloon from the back. Okay, I think we're ready. What you're holding in your hand is a life. It's a life that's been abused and snuffed out, humiliated and degraded simply for not wanting to believe, simply for choosing not to believe. This is why every single life, every single little symbolic life in your hands right now is the reason we're doing this. Because no one should have to be tortured or killed or abused simply for having a lack of faith. Take a second to think about that. And if you have a pen, I want you to pick it up and write on your toe tag, on your balloon, your name in solidarity with that person who's been abused simply for their lack of faith. Everybody finished? Are we all done? Is everybody finished? Yes? Okay. So now take a step back and think about this. And also congratulate yourselves on being here and taking one step forward for making sure something like this will never happen again. That these people won't have to be killed or maimed or tortured simply because they don't believe. Give yourselves a round of applause right now. Raise it down, room. We're making history, guys. Do it! Yes! And now I'd like you to crop your balloons down and take a look around and wonder and see which names you've got on your toe tags. And after we've done that, we're going to be taking our balloons just over there to its final resting place for the duration of this particular conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Please do as you've been told, go and have a look, see the names, and then think about them. And once you've done that, you can slowly take your balloons to the end. You're just going to stay in that corner for the rest of the conference. You can follow me if you want. You can leave them there and have a look at them over there. Here we go. You can bring your balloons to the end here and then leave them here. And then you can wander around them tonight and tomorrow if you want. Here we go.
I donated my balloons.
You need to walk, I need to go ahead for 6 seconds. Okay? Why are you telling me? Because I was duty on live stream. No, you weren't. No. I did it for like you said 26 hours. No, you're lying. You said you're gonna sort it out when I called you. Ah, man. You always try to escape work, huh? What work? 6 o'clock. You must disappear. I called you. No, I don't accept. I'm not a Muslim.
Right, thank you very much, Victoria Guggenheim.
Mariam, I need to inform you.
For that
no, it's okay. So what time tomorrow?
Lovely art protest.
Don't.
Bring back the art of protest into the mainstream. Thank you, Victoria.
So I'll be there 7.
Now we're going to have Shelley Segal, who's going to perform for us as a last act for tonight. We have a lot to do tomorrow. Please do take your seats and come back into the room. Shelley's going to sing for us. Shelley is a very well-known singer and songwriter who actually has recorded a few albums. I've heard her before. She's wonderful. Yeah, and she's from Australia. Wow. All the way from Australia to London for this conference. Okay. Over to you, Shelley Segal. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Segal. I'm very honoured to be here today and to be part of global secular movement, and I'm happy for the right and freedom to express my opinions freely. This song is called My Morality. My morality has nothing to do with the Bible or the verses of the Quran. My morality won't judge you by your spirituality, but by the things that you have done. My morality is not set into stone tablets. Don't even tell you not to hurt children. My morality is not dictated by a deity. It's developed from empathy, dependence and love. My morality accepts everybody's sexuality, is more concerned with inequality than validation from above. My morality is not set into stone tablets. Don't even tell you that it's worthwhile to be good, for being good's own sake. That not to think for yourself can be a deadly mistake. My morality is not recitable from memory. It's something inside of me, how I wanna be. Treat others how I want them to treat me. Basically not to hurt anybody. Abhors any brutality. It stems from our common humanity. And it's what my grandmother taught to me. And it's mine because I'm free. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Rob to join me on the guitar. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I grew up in a Jewish family and moderately observant, but my family, my tradition tried to dictate who I could love. And I think it's very common for religious systems and traditions to try and tell us who we can love and how we can love. But we can't love somebody, or we can't love in the way that someone else wants us to love. The song is called Somebody Like You. You say he's not right for me, but you don't know him like I know him. You say there's no harm to him, but you don't see him when we are alone. I can't love somebody like you, just because you want me to know. And I can't love somebody You say he only brings me down. You must be up real high to get that view. You say he doesn't love me. How can you know for sure that you do? I can't love somebody like you just because you want me to know. I can't love somebody like you just because you want me to. Just because you want me to. Thank you very much. So, the synagogue that I attended was a lot stricter than the level of observance that we practice at home. And we attended an Orthodox synagogue which had gender segregation. So the women sit upstairs. If you can't make it upstairs, you can sit up the back with a curtain in front of you, a mechitza. And as a woman, you weren't allowed to sing unaccompanied during the service. You weren't allowed to be a leader. You weren't allowed to lead the congregation in song, an honour that I saw bestowed on my father and my brother. I also went to a Jewish school, and we said prayers every morning, one including a call and response between the boys and the girls, where the boys would say, "Dear God, thank you for not making me a woman." And we would answer back, "Thank you for making me what I am." And this was explained to me by women in my community, saying, it's not that we're worse, it's not that we're less, it's just that we're different. But different is still defined, and I refuse to be defined by my gender. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to perform a Jewish song from the liturgy that my father performs every week in synagogue. And then I'm going to perform my song Eve, which is my response to the way that the Abrahamic traditions try to define women and women's roles. It's called Etzchayim. Mahu our last song. Thank you to Rob for joining me. As I said, we're really proud and honoured to be here, and thank you to all of the organisers and volunteers and speakers for making this happen. Throughout my life, have been inspired by so many different voices and people who put their ideas out there, which can sometimes be intimidating, but I think is the most powerful way to enact change and enact the change that you want in the world. And for me, that's been authors and speakers and musicians and particularly singers who have always spoken to me. And this song is a tribute to all the people who have put their voices out there. And this is called Sing. You give the gift of song when there's so much in this world that's going wrong. You show us how to feel in the pieces of your soul, they help us heal. You make beauty from your pain. You are the heartbeat of the people who are dancing in the rain. I do believe.
Thank you very much, Shelley. What a pleasure to hear that voice. Thank you everybody. It's been a long day. Tomorrow we have a packed agenda as well. And one thing I want to tell you, tomorrow we're going to honour 10 people and give an award for the last 10 years of cancel culture movement that they've been supporting. We've identified 10 people who've actually supported the the work, as well as the fact that in the forefront of fighting for freedom of expression and conscience, and be boarding tomorrow evening at dinner. So, packed agenda for tomorrow.
Get plenty of rest, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, and make your way for to have some cocktail out there. And there is an exhibition, Red Days, Black Nights, or the other way around. It's by Iranian artist who his theme of photography and film is around lonely woman speaking to darkness. Go and have a look, enjoy the exhibition, and have some cocktail. And thank you very much for joining us today, and well done. See you tomorrow. Thank you.